Welcome. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Impact of AI and Data. Each week, we explore how AI is impacting us negatively, positively, but both personally and professionally. Our episode this week is sponsored by WILDA, Women Leaders in Data and Artificial Intelligence. Our speaker today that we are going to focus on is Isabella Richard. And for transparency, Isabella does work at IBM. It's not like I went out and tried to search for speakers that also work at the same company that I do, but Isabella is somebody that I ran across on LinkedIn based on a posting that she had done, and the content was relevant to the podcast. And it was only after I introduced myself that I recognized, oh, she's a fellow IBMer. Welcome, Isabel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
What is it you do at IBM?
So I am the product marketer for the AIX operating system. I also manage the Oracle workload solution marketing for IBM Power. And this year, I've been recently assigned to help out on the enterprise AI story for Power as we have started to roll out those capabilities and develop a go-to-market strategy. So as you know, AI is such a big buzzword and is becoming, part of everyday technology discussion. So I thought this was a great way for me to dive into AI and expand my knowledge a little bit.
So Isabella is coming to us from a marketing lens, and I thought this was relevant because over the past couple years, we have been focused on the impact of AI. We've looked and spoken to industry leaders. We've spoken to consulting firms to get that wider perspective. We've even spoken to students who have just started working in the marketplace to get a view from their lens. But we've also been talking to suppliers who have claimed they have AI, who've talked about how they're using AI. And with the rise in the mid-market space with startups, because AI has become much more accessible, I realized when I was looking at Isabella's postings that we haven't actually touched on what does it mean for an AI startup, and they've got the product because that's what they were focused on, but they really need to get it marketed and they really need to get the messaging out there. And that's exactly what Isabella has an expertise in. So again, welcome to our show today.
Well, thank you so much.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more. Your focus specifically is around that go-to-market offering strategy. And if you think about it, and again, with most cases, you come in after the product has already been created.
Yes, a lot of times, especially with product marketing, you are working to create the messaging and story that supports the go-to-market strategy. So when you're looking at a set of capabilities or a product and you're stepping in and you're trying to figure out what is the value here, and that is so important when you are trying to market a product because there are so many choices for our buyers to choose from out in the market, and they all talk about the best features and why their product is number one and what capabilities they can offer. But a lot of times we miss what that actual problem that they're solving is for the customer. So when you're developing that strategy, it's really important to start with that customer first mindset. When, as a marketer, you're taking all that information from the product team in engineering, and they're just throwing text and specs at you. So, as the product marketer, and when you're developing that message, it's very important to start with that question: what problem are we solving for our client?
Where do you get that from? Because in listening to you, you're coming in after the fact. It's in some cases, this could be a product that's been developed and churned and tested and refined for several years. It's possible that the original reason that they were developing it somehow got lost. So
Yep.
how do you connect the dots and make sure that you're lining on that right messaging?
So you really have to look at, as you just mentioned, what was this product created for? What are these, feature set? What are the capabilities that this product can offer? And then looking at your buyer persona again, who are we trying to target? Who are the people that have bought our product in the past 6 months to a year? asking them for feedback. I think going back to the client and understanding when you're developing a message and a story and a go to market strategy, it's so important to have your customers be advocates and have those discussions with them and ask, how are you using this product? And when you start asking them how they're using it, a lot of times you're then able to see, okay, this might be a problem that we're solving. So an example of that could be uptime and availability. If they were with a product prior where they were facing a lot of unexpected downtime, we would then be able to say, okay, a product that maybe IT admins have, I'm sorry, a problem IT admins have is they're facing unexpected downtime that is causing, customer dissatisfaction and loss of revenue. So then from the marketing perspective, you're able to hone in on, okay, here's this wonderful, for example, in my case, server or operating system. This is how we're solving your problem of unexpected downtime. We're promising you uptime, reliability, availability, serviceability, and then taking it a step further by creating a story around that, looking what that IT admin's day is like, working with our research teams to understand those personas so that we, in our messaging, are targeting those pain points.
At any point in time, do you feel that there's an advantage of you going back out and talking to maybe potential customers you're trying to market this for?
Yes, I do think so for
Mhm.
sure. Because then you're able to hear what the day to day is. I think a lot of times, especially in super large organizations, there can be a disconnect from what the sellers are hearing on the front lines to what is being funneled back to the marketing team. So being able to understand your persona and then not only share that internally, this is who we're trying to target and what our buyer looks like, but then
Mhm.
confirming that with the customers and saying, are these the challenges you face in your day-to-day role? What does a typical day look like to you? And being able to interact with potential clients, or existing clients that might be upgrading, and being able to touch base and gain that feedback is extremely valuable.
It's interesting. As you were explaining this, the first thing that I thought of was this sounds a lot like change management, not marketing. I,
Well, in some cases, it can feel that way, but
Mhm.
I think you do have to understand, in order to tell the story, to translate that technical information into something that resonates with your buyer, that not only will resonate, but will break out from all the noise that our
Mhm.
buyers are seeing on social media, on email marketing, when they're attending webinars. You do have to understand what their pain points are.
In translating that, the root problem that you're trying to solve or the product's trying to solve, um, early on before we started to record, we were talking about translating to value.
Mhm.
And I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit to that a little bit more, because it sounds like what you're saying is it's not just translating the root cause, it's not just understanding the buyer persona, but then you also have to explain to them what the value of this product or service is going to provide to them.
Yeah, so when I
Does
think
that go beyond the actual problem? I think that's what I'm trying to ask.
I think they definitely relate to one another,
Mhm.
because, there is value in purchasing something that will solve your problems, but understanding what that value proposition is, that isn't just features from a spec sheet about a piece of technology. So maybe the value is it ultimately going to save you money and resources at your company? Is it going to help lower the amount of staff that you have to have? Is it going to make your organization and data more secure? So understanding the problems, but then once we're able to say, okay, this is what the problem that we're solving, then we're able to craft that value prop to better take our message to market and resonate with our audience and tell our story. Because within the story, you want to be able to explain what the value is along with the problems that it will solve.
I recognize that when we talk about AI technologies or even emerging technologies, specifically servers and operating systems, we're now looking at IBM's new quantum, chip technology. Um, I don't even remember what the definition of quantum was, and I'm somebody that works for the company. So let's take that same perspective and put your marketing hat back on. There's a lot of new technologies out there that majority of the people that you're trying to sell these products and service to may not even understand what it is you're talking about.
Yes, that is actually very funny that you mentioned that. I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were saying the same thing, that it can be a fourth or fifth grade level of understanding with technologies. They did use the example of quantum because a lot of times in the conversation, or for example with chat gbt that just came up
Mhm.
in the news, people are just using the term AI, but you, as the marketer, you have to be able to explain what that means, not only what it is, but how it will bring value to their business by automating and delivering more customized insights.
You mentioned Chat GPT, and I think what's interesting here is I'm reading all the LinkedIn and the podcast, and it's gotten a lot of hype and it's gotten a lot of here's the value, but there's the opposite, which is here's all the disadvantages of it, and here's what it should not be doing and could be doing. From your marketer's hat, is it still valuable to the company to get any publicity, whether it's positive or negative, or is the marketer there trying to develop the narrative?
Well, I think that is a great point. And I have, even just as a marketer, gone on chat GBTH to see what they are saying about some of the products and things, that I'm involved with in my day to day. But it is very important to have a consistent story and have content that will meet the buyer at every stage of their journey. So, in hopes, as a good marketer, if you are making sure you're looking at it through the lens of the buyer's journey from the discovery stage all the way through the end, you have content out there that supports that, it would be hopeful that a search engine like ChatGPT would be
Mhm.
able to draw a conclusive story that does highlight a lot of the features. But I think all press, it is great to have our name out there and having our clients talk about us or being featured in articles like Business Insider. So I think just being able to combat maybe any negative things by pushing out more content and messaging that is aligned with the positive side of your brand and what your value proposition is.
So if we think back to these suppliers, small businesses, mid-markets, startups, we've got the marketing person. Oftentimes, these startups spend a lot more of their investors' money on the product itself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's only after the fact that we got a marketer in, but oftentimes it's only one, maybe 1.5 people if we're lucky. And if we're truly fortunate, maybe two. And I hear you say the word story quite often, which I
Mm-hmm.
find very interesting. But if I'm, that small supplier that's developing this really awesome tool with very few resources, how do I execute that story?
Right. So that is a great question, and something I'm sure many listeners and many marketers everywhere are struggling with. Because, as a marketer, if you're looking for your career, there are wonderful opportunities at startups where you're going to get all of that hands on experience and really be able to pave the way for that story of the company. And when I say story, I think of when you are asked about a brand or you're asked about a product, what comes to mind? What do you think of? What are some keywords that come up, especially when it's something and you are that specific audience? However, when you are working, as a one-man band, so in a prior role in my lifetime, I was one of only three marketing people, and it was a struggle because marketing does come in a lot of times after the product has been created. And maybe sellers have been selling this product for 3, 4, or 5 years without ever have done any marketing. So you show up as the marketer, and all you really have is, okay, well, we know that this product is successful with our customers, but we don't have a story. We don't have content to support that. So a great way to approach it, and I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but because I'm just such a big fan and supporter of customer advocacy, But a great place to start is looking at, what relationships with clients have been successful. Can we derive any references from this that we can put on our website? How do we start to build that story? And I think client references and case studies are a wonderful way to do that, because it gives a potential buyer an example of a problem, a solution, and what the outcomes were. But you do have to keep in mind, when you are, maybe a one-man band, or you're on a very small marketing team and you have extremely limited budget and resources, you have to think about what you can do with the least amount of resources that will make the biggest impact. So
Mm-hmm.
a negative example of this, or an approach that you probably wouldn't want to take, and that I've seen in the past, is when a marketing person is spending 6 to 9 months on either building out a website or trying to work with an agency, because you do have to rely on agencies a lot of time when you're at a startup or a smaller organization, and spending all kinds of time on just building out the website and thinking about what the logo will look like and the brand colors, when in actuality you can spend all of that time building the website, but if a prospective client comes onto the website and there's nothing there to take them through the journey or educate them, it's a lot of time wasted without any
Mm.
reward or being able to educate that potential client. Whereas maybe you take less resources to, as the product marketer, take the initiative, if you get approval from the client, and write a blog or create an infographic that highlights a recent win from your company and tell that story. That's something that sellers can take immediately and send out to all potential leads. That may lead you to some conversion and further discussion.
And if we're early on in the process where maybe we haven't finished that first customer, success, then it sounds like that infographic is still a visual way, but this is where you create the story, because the story hasn't quite been written yet.
Yes,
Yeah.
and, doing that through visuals, I think, is great. We see now people have extremely short attention spans. We aren't making, 14-page white papers anymore, and especially with emerging technologies, like artificial intelligence, being able to bring as much visual concept to that as possible will help people understand what it is. And especially if you're that early on where you haven't made any sales, being able to create some sort of content that is easily consumed, that describes very simply, what does our product do? How does our product fit into the world? What are some things that it's going to be able to do or make an impact on, in your business or in your industry?
Mhm.
So starting with something that can help tell your story, and there's many options, but making sure that you're understanding your audience and how they are going to consume content. So an example of that is, back to the white papers, don't spend weeks creating 2 or 3 deep technical white papers when you guys haven't had a sale yet and you're just trying to generate leads. You want things that are a little bit more high level, that will
Mhm.
start that journey and move the engagement along.
You and I didn't preface this until just now, but you're in that generation band that we call Generation Z,
Yep.
which is early on in your career. You did mention through your conversation and introduction that you've done a lot of learn on your own,
Mhm.
but I suspect that there might be some other supplemental books or LinkedIn groups or other areas of navigating that probably have supplemented that learn on my own kind of mentality. Do you have anything to share?
Yes, definitely. So I definitely am thirsty for knowledge. I love learning. It's why I'm in the tech industry.
Mhm.
There's always something to learn. But I think there's been a few different ways, and I've paid attention to, how I do absorb information best. And I am an audio and visual learner. So um, visually, I love to watch videos online about different types of technology. And there's one specific where there's this person that walks you through an entire data center, and that someone had sent me a couple years ago. And they go through every part of the data center and explain, what this does, how it fits into a data center, and what the capabilities are. So I think, videos, anything you're interested in, we have so many resources at our fingertips, but also a little bit more specific to technology and product marketing. I'm part of the Product Marketing Alliance, and that is a community based in the UK for product marketers where we come together. We have a massive Slack channel, and we're able to share industry news, marketing trends, resources, ask each other questions. So I think no matter what role you're in, whether you're in marketing or in a technical role, there are communities like that. And I highly recommend leveraging them, because you learn the best from your peers and people that are doing the same things each day. And then I am a massive fan of podcasts. If I'm not on a meeting, I am listening to a podcast. I love it. But the B2B technology marketing podcast is something I really enjoy, especially because, there are a lot of people in the Product Marketing Alliance, for example, that are in consumer marketing, which, B2B and consumer can learn things from each other. And especially as time goes on, that marketing strategy, has overlapped so much. But the B2B marketing technology podcast really talks to a lot of people that are working in B2B marketing in the tech industry, which has been very beneficial, especially during my time at IBM, and just
Mhm.
learning a lot of those key terms, and just hearing from people, and thinking about what their role looks like and how they're able to tackle some of their challenges in their role.
So as we pivot a little bit, I did notice on LinkedIn, because I stalk everybody on LinkedIn at this point.
Who
Um,
doesn't?
I, I did notice, and I'm going back to the connecting the dots with the Generation Z. But you are a member of the board of advisors for Nichols College in Boston, which I found very fascinating, because I always had this perception, oh, board of advisors, very senior in your career, towards the latter half of your career. And I just want to highlight this before, we wrap up for today. Talk to me how did this come to fruition, and maybe provide some insights on some of the things that you do as a board of advisor.
Definitely. So I agree with that statement. At first, I did think that board of advisors, that
Mhm.
was a very senior aspiration, until I found out that there is a level above that called a trustee. So that is my next aspiration after being an advisor. But at Nichols, as a student in my undergrad, I was extremely involved. I was president of the marketing club. I was a marketing teaching assistant for 2 different semesters. I was a peer tutor, and I was very involved in the college. And I knew from very early on that I wanted to also give back upon graduation, because one of the best parts about Nichols was the welcoming alumni network and the board of advisors. So that pivots to answering the question about, what does it mean to be an advisor on the board. And it really talks about, and we communicate, offering the 3 T's, which is our time, treasure, and talent, and to support the Nichols College students in the community during what sometimes can be very challenging, and trying to explore career opportunities. So everybody on the board plays a special role and is able to contribute their own strengths. But for me, I definitely give a lot of my time to the college through mentoring and coming in to speak to the students about my experience as a woman working in technology.
Mhm.
I'm a big advocate for women in the STEM field, and starting that, at a younger age. So while I was at Nichols, I was working with a group called Girls Who Code, and that's a very young group of girls that came in. And I just knew, I want to be able to mentor women, that, to give back to the women, and other alumni that have mentored me.
Mhm.
So I try to visit Nichols at least, a few times a semester in person to either talk to a class. I have a mentee right now who is a senior, so she's about to start her second semester graduating. But Nichols, had asked me to be on the board because they did recognize my dedication to
Mhm.
delivering my time and really just giving back to the college. But it makes me feel so great to just be able to give back because I would not be where I am today without the board of the advisors that was there during my tenure. So
I mention this because I've recently been listening, listening, watching, reading on LinkedIn, where a lot of women are trying to gain experience or try to figure out how to get on a board, not just as, the ultimate goal as a board member of an executive board, but starting with a board of advisors, which then gets you the experience that, leads to other avenues. So I wanted to highlight that as this, young professional, um, I definitely wanted to mention this because if anyone out there is interested in a way of giving back, I thought this was a great opportunity that maybe someone else listening that's in this Generation Z kind of profile can kind of do multiple things with, this opportunity.
definitely. And
Mhm.
I think a big part of it was probably just a misconception I had had before, I knew I was able to join the board. Um, because I was under the impression, oh, if you want to be involved in alumni activities like speaking to a classroom or being a mentor or helping get other alumni engaged, I thought that you were only able to do those activities by being a formal board member. And
Mhm.
I had reached out to some former professors and faculty of the college, just offering my time and saying, I am available to, help out where is needed. I would love to provide feedback. And once I opened that door by just offering my time, I continued to get asked to come back for more events and more volunteering. And then that was recognized by the leadership, and that's what led to the opportunity. So my advice to anybody, especially women that are looking to join the board, and this
Mhm.
goes for anything, but you know if you see there's a need and you can help out, don't be afraid to ask or to offer. And that can be difficult. It can be difficult getting out of your comfort zone or being afraid that you might hear no or you have to be at this level. But just showing that willingness that you are willing to go the extra step and give your volunteer time, I think that that's a great segue to some of those leadership opportunities.
So we are going to wrap up, Isabella. Is there any additional lessons learned or feedbacks that you'd like to provide to our audience today?
Lessons learned, I think just being, a woman working in a male dominated field. I think that just, be your own advocate and use your voice. Don't be afraid to speak up. Or I know from Sandberg's Lean In book, have a seat at the table, but it can be very intimidating. I know sometimes I'm the only woman on calls with all men that might be twice my age, but you can't let that that you can't let that keep you from speaking your voice. You are there for a reason. When you look around in those situations, you are there, you're where you're supposed to be, and people do want to hear you, but a lot of times it's just our own fear that gets in the way of that. So lesson learned is to speak up, and your voice deserves to be heard.
I think that is the perfect way to end today's episode. Thank you so much. I do want to reference that if you're looking for Isabella on LinkedIn, it's Isabella Richards. Because I noticed that you also have Isabella Sansone
Yeah,
Richards.
so Santone is my maiden name, so just as the transition, I kept both on the page, but now my married name is Isabella Richard. I got married back in November, so still transitioning to the new name.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
thank you again for setting aside time today.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I really appreciate it.